Hey everyone. As you may or may not know, behavioral addiction is on the rise worldwide, from alcohol use disorder to gambling to a big one since COVID, the obsession of internet usage. In our latest podcast, we sit down with a company that's developing an IP while doing research with ketamine to potentially find a cure for all these behavioral addictions. Sound too good to be true? Find out now in our latest podcast. What's going on, bro? Hey everyone, welcome to TDR. And here today on the podcast, he's back on the podcast, the CEO of Awakn Life Sciences, Anthony Tennyson. Anthony, good to see you. How is life over the pond in beautiful UK?
Oh, well, Shad, let's not start off on the wrong foot here. I'm in Ireland. So everything is...
We're in Ireland.
I'm in Ireland. Everything is really good in Ireland. Thank you very much. How's things in the US?
It's... How do I say it? Let's put it this way. I haven't looked at my portfolio in over a month, but I'm sure that you can probably understand and relate. But other than that, everything's swell. I'm trying to enjoy nature this time of year because other than that, what a crazy world we're in right
Listen,
now.
Geopolitics, macroeconomics, risk off. It's an interesting time in the capital markets for small cap in general, and for small cap biotech, it's a particularly interesting time.
Yeah. Do you not feel, as we talk specifically about your industry, that you're really starting to see the sound business model companies starting to separate themselves, kind of graduating to that next level? Because a lot of conversations I've had behind the scenes with various executives and leadership teams from across the industry are really starting to put forward their business plan and are really starting to execute now. And as much as the biotech and psychedelic industry has been hit hard, it's very cyclical, as you've said before. And I do believe that there's going to be, only a handful of companies, but the strong companies are ready to go to that next level, and you're starting to see that. Do you agree with that?
I think there's definitely there's either a shakeout happening or there's a shakeout coming, where there will be consolidation or survival of the fittest. And I think it's companies that have a compelling proposition or some strong differentiators that will be able to separate themselves from the pack and attract companies and investment dollars, but investment companies who have dry powder to deploy into undervalued but interesting biotechnology companies. And I think what you got is what are those points of differentiation? Is it data near term, or is it catalyst events in the very near term? Is it a business model that means they really understand not just the R&D, but the so what next, as in what to do with that R&D and how to generate revenue from it?
Yeah.
Or is it companies that are actually generating revenue today with a pathway to profitability? I think those are some of the key differentiators, and companies that have those differentiators are the ones that will begin to separate themselves from the pack if they haven't done so already.
Yeah, makes sense. Pathway to profitability. Let's talk about some of the news that came out last week involving your data from your ketamine study. That was the press release outlining successful 2A/B trial investigating ketamine-assisted therapy for behavioral addictions. The newest study was billed as the world's first ketamine treatment study for behavioral addictions. So now that the PR was published, let's go a step further into this announcement and what it means and the significance of it all.
Yeah, absolutely. So when we look at what Awakn does, Shad, we're a biotechnology company. We're in fact a late stage biotechnology company developing therapeutics to better treat addiction with a near-term focus on alcohol use disorder. Alcohol use disorder, which affects 400 million people globally and for which the current standard of care is poor. We're taking a unique approach, Shad, to developing those therapeutics to better treat addiction. We're targeting the brain circuits that house the behaviors that drive the addictions. And we're disrupting those brain circuits with psychedelic compounds. And during the space that disruption provides, we're coming in with proprietary psychotherapy to enable people to develop much more robust and dynamic coping mechanisms to reduce the probability of relapse.
Gotcha.
As you mentioned, a phase 2B trial, our approach has been proven to be successful in clinical stage trials. So we have human efficacy data. People coming into the phase 2B trial for alcohol use disorder, they were sober 2% of the time. That's 7 days a year.
Right.
The rest of the time, they weren't sober. Coming through the phase 2B trial for ketamine for AUD, we had delivered 86%
I know.
sobriety for ketamine to treat AUD. But our approach is not just applicable to alcohol use disorder or substance addictions. Because we're targeting the brain circuits, we're actually now able to also develop treatments for behavioral addictions,
Hmm.
which affect hundreds of millions of more people. And those behavioral addictions like gambling disorder,
Right.
compulsive sexual behavior disorder, binge eating disorder, these are chronic problems. And if you think the standard of care for alcohol use disorder is poor, the standard of care for behavioral addictions is even worse. It's barely existent. And so what we did is we initiated and we just completed the first studies of their kind in the world to begin the development pathway to develop pharmacological or drug-based treatments for these chronic behavioral addictions. We completed that study a couple of weeks ago, and we announced the results a couple of weeks ago. And now, just today, we've announced the filing of patents, or very recently, we've announced the filing of patents based upon the data developed in that early stage study. And what that means for us as an organization is it means we are in a very, very strong position to be one of the only companies in the world to have IP around the use of ketamine to treat those behavioral addictions. And we believe that really strengthens our
That's
IP
big.
portfolio.
That's real big.
Yeah, and if we are successful with those patents, it means we'll be the only company in the world able to develop commercial therapeutics using ketamine, its metabolites, or its derivatives to treat those behavioral addictions. And if that patent is
So
successful, it puts us in a leadership position in this industry for the treatment of behavioral addictions that affect about 700 million people globally.
So when I look at the patent itself, now are these patents going to be individualized, one for gambling, one for sexual behavior, one for gambling, or is this a patent that basically covers all behavioral addictions that will focus on, how do I say it, like all four at one given time? How would that work?
Yes, indeed, that's a great question. And so the patent is across those four indications, those four behavioral addictions that I mentioned: gambling disorder,
Yep.
compulsive sexual behavior disorder, binge eating disorder, and internet gaming disorder.
Okay.
And three of those are on the DSM-5, and compulsive sexual behavior disorder is on the ICD-11. The great thing, though, our patent is structured in such a way that it has the potential to be applied to other behavioral addictions that we didn't look at in that early stage study. So it's quite a broad study, or quite a broad patent. That study that we completed provides the data to enable us to file that patent, formally file
Right.
that patent, gives us, we believe, a leading position in the use of ketamine, its derivatives, and its metabolites in the context of treating those behavioral addictions, which affect many hundreds of millions of people, for which there is currently no pharmacological based treatments, and for which the current standard of care is poor.
And this is for the world, you're suggesting, correct?
Currently filed for the US, but the US is the leading
Right.
country in the area of IP,
Yep.
potential applicability in other territories.
Wow. When I think of these behavioral addictions too, like think of how much it's going to grow. I'm not saying necessarily in a good way either, but when we look at the way our world has gone, especially since COVID's taken place, um, online as far as addiction is a real thing to say the least. And when you look at a lot of the younger generations, like where are they going to be in 10 years when you already see some of the habits that are taking place, where probably I don't know how much percentage of their time throughout the day is on different, tablets and phones and stuff like that, right?
Correct. These behavioral addictions are a growing problem,
Yeah.
particularly as we come out of, we're now out of the COVID caves, but particularly during that COVID time, those addictions to those stimuli,
Yeah.
and particularly we look at something like gambling disorder and how intertwined into society and how commonplace gambling has become, and how the triggers exist and in so many places, and the access to gambling is so easy because of devices. It's a big problem now, affecting about 400 million people, but it is a growing problem. And
Yeah, to say
the
the
current
least.
standard of care for that addiction is poor. So it's really, really, it's. I don't know if exciting is the right word to
I
use, because we're
know. I
talking
know.
about individuals, families, and communities who are being, adversely affected by these
Needed.
conditions. but it's needed. That's a great way, much better way to describe it, Chad. It's needed, and it's beholden upon us as a company to develop these, to research, develop, and to deliver these treatments, and that's exactly what we're doing.
When I look at this, are you surprised there hasn't been more conversation, or do you feel there has been in the industry related to these behavioral addictions? Because these are real things that how many people can understand and relate to, myself included. When I think about, sometimes it's like, what have I done the last 3-4 hours just looking online, right? I'm guilty of it. We all are.
Yeah. And what's brilliant with, if you look at what we are as a company, right, we've got 4 differentiators, right? And again, about to that question, back to how companies separating themselves from the pack. So the 4 differentiators for us, it's the market opportunity. And again, it's hard to talk about addictions as a market opportunity because it's individuals and families and communities who are suffering. But 20% of the planet suffers with a substance addiction, and hundreds of millions of more people suffer with behavioral addictions.
Right.
And because of our approach to treating addiction, targeting brain circuits, we're able to develop treatments for both. And psychedelics are unique in being able to develop, enabling us to develop those treatments, because it enables us to have a polypharmacology approach to targeting the brain circuits rather than individual receptor sites that drive those addictions. And so I'm not sure why people haven't looked at the applicability of psychedelics to behavioral addictions in the same way that companies have looked at the applicability of those for mental health, like treatment-resistant depression and addiction. But we're doing that. And it's a significant market opportunity. It's a multi-billion-dollar industry that's deeply underperforming. So first differentiator is being able to bring innovative and disruptive, but proven, successful therapeutics to bear, to enable this $100 billion a year addiction treatment industry to just be more effective. And the second thing then about our differentiator, which feeds off that, is our team. And our ability to do that is driven by our team, particularly with industry leaders like Professor David Nutt and Professor Celia Morgan, setting our strategy and enabling us to understand how to disrupt those brain circuits, and then how to develop combined therapeutics of drugs and therapies used in combination. Third thing that sets us apart, then again, tied into opportunity, team, it's data-driven science, and it's the phase 2B completed for AUD, delivering groundbreaking results, published. The first study of its kind in the world for behavioral addictions completed, and patents filed and PR announced. And then it's, when you look at us, and it's all the way back to then separating from the pack, it's when you look at our market cap as to where we are right now versus the market opportunity that we have, the team that we're bringing to bear, and the science that we have. I think there's quite a compelling investment case when you look at our market cap against the potential with the team we're bringing to bear, the science that we have, and the door that we're knocking on, the size of the door. It's quite an interesting time, I think, to look at us as a company.
Well, I mentioned this yesterday in a LinkedIn post about how certain companies in the space are graduating to that next level. And I don't know how many press releases there were in the early days where somebody had hired a world-renowned doctor. And I think saying and doing, what are some key things to look for? Obviously, the resume is one, but most importantly, too, is relationships, with government officials is a big thing as well. Do you find on a lot of the behavioral addictions and the conversations that you've had with government officials, how much of is it a concern right now? Knowing that the average person knows this is going to be a big concern globally. It already is in a lot of ways. So we need to get ahead of the curve, obviously, right now. But I'd be curious to know, with some of the conversations you're having, how much is it a concern right now for various government officials that you speak with?
So we're really lucky with the team that we have with David and Celia. And for example, David was in the House of Commons, so the UK Parliament, a couple of days ago, giving evidence at a select committee, being cross-examined by the great and the good of the UK political system about how psychedelics should be used to treat mental health and addiction. So we're in a unique position because of our team's caliber and stature, that we've got good connections into our home territory of the UK. And so some of those interactions, we probably have, there's the interactions we have with politicians and healthcare economic buyers, so like the NHS, which is the second largest purchaser of healthcare services in the world, with an annual budget of $200 billion. The questions come in across gambling addiction, alcohol use disorder, and treatment-resistant depression, sort of in equal amounts. And the uniqueness of our business model, Shad, enables us to be informed and to answer questions on all of those. So we do three things in our company. We do R&D, where we are developing those combined therapeutics to treat addiction. And in that R&D work stream, we've got multiple work streams with multiple compounds, de-risking it and providing us with multiple shots on goal to de-risk it for investors. We do clinics to enable us to understand the delivery model for those combined therapeutics. So again, it de-risks it for investors because we've got an IP strategy that gives us multiple shots on goal, but we're actually revenue generating in our second financial year through our clinics business. And then we're going to start delivering these therapeutics at scale by out-licensing them to other clinic operators. And that business model de-risks it for investors, but enables us to have very informed conversations with the regulators and the healthcare service, because we're doing R&D where we're talking to the MHRA. We're doing clinics where we're talking to the UK state, but because we're doing clinics, and in our clinics, we're treating people with substance addictions, but also treatment-resistant depression. So we've got conversations going with the economic buyers at a state level in the UK as to how and when they can start to send clients towards us. So we're having pretty good conversations.
That's interesting.
We've actually got a memorandum of understanding signed with the NHS in the UK to enable us to start treating people as soon as possible on a much larger scale in the UK.
So that's big. You really got to understand, obviously, the relationships that you're having going on. I was going to ask you, like, what are some of the next steps that investors can expect? But you pretty much have outlined it. But I want to go one step further, and it's as far as success. So in addition to what you've already outlined, where does, I guess, successful next stage outcome lead for your company?
Absolutely, that's a great question. So if you remember what I said, we've got three core functions. So across those three core functions, some of the key things for investors to listen out for, to watch for us in the next sort of 9 to 12 months, key transformative events for us. Moving that phase 2B, successful phase 2B trial forward into phase 3 as part of a strategy to seek to secure marketing authorization in the UK for our proprietary therapeutics to treat alcohol use disorder. Key milestones for that are we've applied for a grant from the UK state for 2/3 funding for the cost of that phase 3 trial. And we'd hope to have an answer on that before end of Q2 this year. And then reg and ethics approval in Q4. Within a month. And then reg and ethics approval for that phase 3 trial in Q4 this year, and first participant in that trial in Q1 next year. With behavioral addictions, it's doing...
Go ahead. Sorry, I cut you off there.
No, it's okay. With behavioral addictions, then, it's doing a deeper dive into gambling disorder. And if successful, then moving into phase 2B for gambling disorder later this year, early next year. Across clinics, which is the second pillar of the company, it's continuing to deliver cutting-edge treatments for people in the UK and Europe using our proprietary therapeutics in our clinics, earning revenue, and potentially opening further clinics over the next 12 months. And our third activity is therapeutics commercialization. It's actually, this is what we're really excited about. It's licensing our IP into the addiction treatment industry in the US. We're going to do that in a beta fashion later this year and go live formally in Q1 next year.
Wow.
So lots of milestones across the three core activities of the company, which focus on bringing research forward and earning revenue.
Do you think it's almost a better situation to have government funding of a phase 3 trial than it is to raising money yourself and doing a phase 3 trial? Because that is, quite the endorsement, is it not?
It certainly is, because it answers one of the key questions that I always think about all the time. It's the so what next, right? And so progressing your research through certain milestones, it's critically important. But so what next? And so the so what next is, people may think that securing regulatory approval is the end goal. It's not. It's the so what next. You're at the start line then. Then you got to commercialize these. You got to earn revenue. You got to treat people. So in the UK, the NHS owns 90% of the marketplace. They cover 90% of the 90% payers. So what we have with this phase 3 is we've got engagement with the UK state in our phase 3. And part of that is that they want to understand how to deliver these services at scale. So it's a really good stamp of approval if we are successful.
Yeah.
Will be a really good stamp of approval, but actually it means that we've got a relationship going with the biggest economic buyer in the territory that we want to commercialize
That's
this
huge.
in. So
That's
really
huge.
important for us, a really good stamp of approval, enables them to familiarize themselves with what we're doing, validates what we're doing, and potentially increases the probability of success for us.
It's great to have these conversations. It's been a couple months since we connected, but wow, obviously, to say the least, there's been a lot of behind the scenes work that's taking place. But again, this is what I'm trying to reiterate to my audience. As much as, like, the biotech and psychedelic space has been hit hard, to say the least, over the last 6 months. This is going to take some time, but this is very, very impressive with the ball that's moving forward. Even in Canada, the province of Quebec announced and basically approved the first um, ketamine mushroom therapy, or psilocybin, excuse me, mushroom therapy last week. So it's encouraging to see more and more states decriminalizing in the US as well. There's some real compelling research that's being done here, but we're at that next stage where people are understanding a little bit more as to what the journey is going to take for, companies to succeed and provide, as what we said, a needed alternative for people everywhere across the world. So I appreciate the update.
Yeah, Shad, absolute pleasure to speak to you and to your audience, and happy to come back whenever you want to speak to me again.
Let's keep in touch. Let's keep this going. Let's not wait 2 months, right?
Indeed.
All right. Thanks, Anthony.
Hey everyone, thanks for watching. We appreciate you giving this video a thumbs up. We also value your feedback, so leave a comment below. And if you like what we do, then share this video on your socials. And don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel and tap on that bell to receive notifications for all future videos that we post. Thanks for watching.